Well, training is very, very important. And I want to talk to you a little bit about training because training is very, very important. And that's coming right up. Well, we're at the 2017 ATMC conference in Denver, Colorado, and with me is Donny Seyfer, and he is a training advocate. And he is such a successful shop owner because he's a training advocate. You need to listen to what he's got to say. So, Donny, I know you have a lot to say about training. You're so involved in training, anything from shop management to cybersecurity. So, just kind of tell us a little bit, if you will, what you think perhaps is some of the most important aspects of what made you successful in your quest for training and then even the training that you do now.
Well, Jim, I think the biggest thing with training is that when you get really good at something, it's easy to say, well, I know that. And when you stop educating yourself, you don't know that anymore. And I've seen technicians who start to kind of lose their edge, if you will, and even on stuff that they used to do, because the way the brain works is the more we run through those neural pathways, those little paths we go through to get to an answer, the more we use them, the better they work. And after a while, when we don't use them, I can't remember somebody's last name because I haven't seen them for a year, right? But if I see them every day, it's right there. And I think training's the same way, and I don't think you have to train on the same thing to keep all of that working. My experience, right now I'm learning to do metalworking, like running an English wheel and stuff like that, which has zero to do with what I do day to day, right? But I find that then I'm more stimulated to do other pieces of training. And we learned a whole bunch today about this whole idea of dopamine and what it does when you're training and you're learning. And gosh, I was thinking, well, maybe that's it. Maybe I just get off on training, right?
Yeah, and we should probably mention here that dopamine, it's kind of like a chemical that the brain produces when you feel good about what you're doing. And it kind of gives you a natural high, I guess, if you will. And training and successful training and being successful at a job that you just learned to do also helps to produce that. So it's kind of a win-win ongoing thing. It's really quite amazing. But it adds another reason why you want to do training, not just that you can't store training, and we know that, but you want to keep at it and keep learning about this thing that you're interested in so that you get more of a high, I guess, huh?
Yeah, I think there's almost an inertia to education. It's that whole objects in motion tend to stay in motion. And I think that as you continue to do any kind of learning, it just makes you want to do more. And I'll have 2 or 3 books going at one time just because I get bored with one and move on. And I move back and forth, but at the same time, I'm learning new things. And so to me, for a technician, the car is changing constantly. So you're automatically, if you've decided to be in this industry, you've already committed to constant education. And if you haven't, it'll leave you behind.
Oh, I totally agree with that, and I think you guys will probably agree with that too, especially how technology has been advancing so rapidly just over the last 2 or 3 years. It's just amazing.
Yeah, and we talked today quite a bit because I was invited to talk about cybersecurity. And I had a real rock star cybersecurity expert with me, but I was talking about the shop piece of it. And I think the really important thing is that in addition to being plumbers and electricians and mechanics and HVAC guys and all those things that a technician is, if you think about all the disciplines we have, now you have to add IT onto that. If you haven't already, you have to add IT onto that. So this job keeps getting bigger and bigger, and everything's so interconnected. So even when we're using a scan tool, we've got that. We used to go in and scan for, well, I know the engine's not running right, so I'm going to look at the engine. Well, that doesn't work anymore. Now it's scan everybody, because we might have something over here that we aren't even thinking about causing the engine to run poorly. Exactly. And so those are things that those have changed.
Yep, it certainly has. And I don't know if I want to open this little can of worms or Pandora's box, but today, just hooking up that scan tool, you almost need to think about having it on a separate network because of cybersecurity. And that's a whole nother area that you need to be looking into and being trained on. And it just goes because your customer has a cell phone that they talk to their car, and you got your scan tool hooked up to that car, and if there's something bad in that cell phone, it goes right into your scan tool. And you see, it just never ends. Training is a constant, ongoing thing if you're going to be a successful shop owner and technician.
Yeah, and I think to your point, so you did a really good job, by the way, evangelizing that piece that we need to add cybersecurity to our even our scan tool considerations in our network. But I think to that point, where you learn isn't necessarily always the traditional paths. There are some things out there, just reading some of the tech articles that come out from some of the magazines, that's relevant to those of us that turn a wrench.
Absolutely, and they're out every month. I don't think a month goes by where I don't get an electronic magazine that's got some kind of an article in there that I look at and say, I got to read that. This is just really great stuff. And every time I do, I'm glad I did, because I pick up something that I can use that I did not know before.
Well, that's good. That's what we want to do.
That's exactly what we want to do. So, on an ongoing basis, to Donnie's point, you got to keep at this. I always say you can't store training. You know, if you learn it, you got to use it, because if you don't use it, you lose it, kind of a thing. And things change so rapidly. This is something you really got to keep up with. Would you agree this is what probably led to the success that you have?
Oh, absolutely. That has been our bigger, better deal. As long as my dad started our business in 1961, he was helping to found ASA in Colorado in 1963. So he recognized right out of the chute that education piece and being able to talk to other shop owners about what makes you good, that was important. And all along the way, he instilled in us, the technicians that work for us, and my brother and I, knowledge is king. Knowledge is what makes you better at what you do. You know, and a good friend of mine, you probably know Jeff Peavy, that's the president of AMI. He says it's the only sustainable competitive advantage. I think I quoted him right there, is your knowledge. Because as you learn more, the one thing that no one else can beat you at is what you know.
That's great, and they can't take that away from you either. So, once again, if you want to stay on top of your game, and I know you do, because number one, it makes you look good, and number two, you make a nice living that way.